The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers.
Hello and welcome everybody to a follow-up interview with Colin Hayter. Colin and I spoke recently for the first time on air during the Untangled Gathering event. Colin spoke about his personal journey and discovery of the Gosford Glyphs, a very controversial site here in Australia, which has recently, thankfully, just been heritage listed and protected after a fight of many, many years by a number of people. Now, when I did advertise today's interview, I also posted the first interview that we did for those of you who didn't get to see it as a bit of background for what we're going to talk about today. We will recap briefly the story that we've already covered and then pick it up from there, because it really is an evolving story, not just the story itself that's being told on those walls in Gosford, but Colin's personal story and what's coming out in this evolving re-experiencing and resharing of culture and our true history, not just here in Australia but globally, really, because there were relationships, there was shared culture, and that's what we're seeing here. And without further ado, let's just bring Colin in. Good morning and welcome, Colin.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Australia. G'day, world. Thanks for the great opportunity to sit in front of you all again today and explain some more detail about the discoveries at Gosford and the consequences coming from that. And thank you very much for the many people that are following my release of information over this last year. It seems I have a very great large group of very good, fine people that are following me on this, and it's their support that's helping to help me keep going and give me the confidence I need to bring it to you. So once again, thank you very much, and I look forward to telling you some more today. So,
well, on behalf of everybody who's following this story, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So without further ado, if I might just get my pictures up, and from that I'll just lead through. And what I'd like to do this morning is, of course, there'll be many new viewers today who haven't seen the work before or heard the work before, and we are struggling with pictures here, by the way. I didn't think this was going to happen. Here we go. Next picture. Yeah, once again, I'll just quickly rehash. Struggling with pictures, sorry. If I may, the story again. So the story on the walls, I'll just start with that. It goes like this once again. The story came about from its beginnings in the Westcar Papyrus. Of course, the Westcar Papyrus was the Egyptian link that we found that brings the glyphs to a more positive light. And it goes like this. It suggests, of course, that a famous king, King Khufu in Egypt, was talking with Djeffor, a royal family member, and the royal family member Djeffor suggested to Khufu that there was a wizard in the land that knew of the secrets of those who had passed. And Khufu, of course, was really interested in that. In fact, Khufu was fascinated with things magic and of course possessed with the idea of furthering her afterlife. So Khufu asked this family member Djed to head to the land of Djed Snefru to go and pick up this man and bring him to her. And I say her, of course. And of course, the West Coast Papyrus records that meeting took place. Goes on to explain that from there they hatched a plot to head to the land of Djed Snefru to go and look for the house of God, or the house of Thoth, as they called it. And from that, Khufu was going to copy some of the features of that into her pyramid, her house on the horizon. Yes.
For those who haven't heard it before, this land that you're referring to is here in Australia. It's
yes.
Australia.
That's right.
The land of Djed Snefru. There is a magic man, or a man of knowledge, who knows where the house of the Lord, or house of God, or house of Thoth is, and it's supposed to be located here in Australia.
That's
and
right.
So he came and picked him up and took him back to Egypt.
He did.
And then all three of them came back here.
Well, more than three of them. Yeah, Didi was the man. Didi was the Aboriginal chief and elder, as it turns out, from the land of Djed Snefru, that was taken back to Egypt. He spent a great deal of time there, an entire season. He and his children, and when we say children again, Didi was 110, so his children weren't toddlers, they were perhaps in the elderly themselves.
And what about the word season? Does season mean the same thing it does now? Are you talking about?
What was that? A season? Well, when I say season, let's just say some time. Yeah, he did. He spent some time there. I guess the return visit would have been due to the waterways around Egypt being available as well, of course, and they're not always available around Egypt. There's the season where the water goes away and you can't move anything other than over land. But however, they once again, made a plot to come to the land of Djed Snefru, Australia, to look for the house of Thoth. In Egypt, that's where the contact cuts off. The West Coast Papyrus basically just finishes almost as if it was lost to antiquity by falling away. It is paper, of course, and it would seem the story takes on its journey once again here on the walls in Australia. And here, of course, it goes on to tell.
Sorry, Colin, but you kind of glitched out a little bit then. You're saying that story, the West Coast Papyrus story, picks up on those Gosford walls.
It does. That's right. Yeah, where it finishes back in Egypt, it basically starts afresh on the walls. In fact, it goes backwards just a small distance in the story and then starts again. The Egyptians were always very clever at being precise about what it was they were talking about. And it would seem that the author of the Gosford Glyphs, Djed, was clever in doing that, in that he knew where to begin. So once again, so the story goes on then to explain that they did arrive. Some misfortune happened, of course. They were caught in a storm, and the wall tells rather clearly that unfortunately King Khufu, she was killed, along with Didi, the magician, or Djed, the chief and elder, the same man, of course, and 100 of the purest, most efficient, brightest, bravest Egyptians. And they, of course, they were killed too. So the funerary wall, or the walls at Gosford, quickly become a funerary wall explaining not only their arrival, but who was there, and then, of course, their death. And
so they never really made it to land? They never got to...
Well, before their death, it's hard to tell. Once again, I did address it on the other bit as well. It says on the walls that they turned around. Now, I don't know if that means they turned around after they found the house of God, or they turned around on their way back to take Didi home, perhaps. So I've no idea. But they certainly arrived on shore dead or alive in the end, because there they are. So once again, they were buried there, and the walls tell it rather clearly. So we thought that was the end of the story, and but of course it turned out it wasn't. It turned out I made a mistake, and it's easy to do, the Gosford Glyphs. It's a very complicated language, and of course, I'm probably the first one reading it correctly for the first time. And where I thought it said that they buried Dee Dee the elder between the walls, it turned out I was wrong. On the walls, it actually said that they prepared, bundled, and placed Dee Dee in Khufu's palanquin. Now, palanquin is one of those devices where 4 servants might all have a handle and they'll carry the king around. And of course, Khufu's palanquin was there at Gosford. It too is mentioned in the Westcar Papyrus as being there at that place. On the walls next, it mentions that after Dee Dee's death, they bundled, prepared, and placed him in the palanquin, and his children carried him across the mountains. Hence my mistake. I thought they said they buried him between the mountains. So it
Just
turns out that,
to clarify, because we're dealing with names and words that people have never heard before.
Yeah.
Dee Dee was the Australian Aboriginal elder that King Khufu came to pick up.
Yes.
And the name of her companion, assistant, the guy that came with her,
yes,
was what was his name again?
Jeththor.
Jeththor.
Yeah, Jeththor, it would seem, was the leader of the expedition, if we can call it an expedition. Khufu was certainly the king and ruler, but Jeththor seemed to be in charge of such things. After all, he was the not just a high priest, but he was a vizier for the royal family. So
how common was it in that day? Do we know for a king to actually leave Egypt, leave the land?
Well, quite common. The tales of the ruler before that, Khufu's father Snefru, tell us that he journeyed to many lands. It would seem he was a fine politician, an international politician in that way, in the way that he went out of his way to increase trade for Egypt and sharing. And when he found the country that also helped with that sharing, he of course gave it his name. He gave it the name, his own name. He added the name Snefru to the country's name, giving that country protection from Egypt. So Australia, called Dijed Snefru, got its name from the chief and elder, Dee Dee or Dijed, and of course Snefru added his own name then, giving the total Dijed Snefru.
Okay.
And this is where Australia's name comes from. And the idea was that it gave that country protection for the idea that it had its name around it. And so this is what happened. So it wasn't unusual, no, that a ruler would sail great journeys. So it seems Snefru went to places like Lebanon.
Your internet is a little bit sketchy.
Is it? All right, what's happening there?
You're freezing up every now and then. So if there's anything else that's being used on your internet, if you could, anybody else that might be using it?
No, there's no other devices on at the moment.
Okay.
Can I get the pictures so I can see the pictures? Right. We just got up before as a picture. I presume you can see that there now?
That's the first one.
No, not yet. Still seeing you.
Okay.
So
right.
we haven't done share then, have we?
We haven't done any.
No, it's gone. Do we have to press share again?
Yes, you do. Every time you want to share your screen.
Right.
Okay. There we go. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to get these pictures. Here's a random picture. A lot of us are certainly interested in just hearing the story, and
sorry, Colin, I'm not catching you.
So, okay. What have we got? Are you there?
I am, but your audio is not great.
Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on.
You're better now.
Am I? All right. Good. What I'm hoping to do is go to talk with some pictures, and so I'm just going to get those up. What have we got? Have we got anything at all?
Have a look.
I don't know. What can you see, Dale? Have you got anything there?
I can see your desktop. You are screen sharing.
Oh, I am. Okay. So you can see this picture on the.
It's your audio that's the problem at the moment.
Is it really? All right. We'll try and get closer. What we're looking at here on the wall. So this is just some talk to give the the interview today some buzz. We're looking at the sentence here. You can see above. We can see perhaps what looks like a penis.
Right.
Can you see my penis here? Okay.
Yes, I can. Top left.
Very good. So what we're looking at here is a sentence. And this sentence, if I just read the top that we can see, this says, these words, it says, the manlike one, prepared. Next we see a big arrow, and this arrow here says the words, done properly, done in the way of Egypt. And it's made so bold like that because it's Jephthah's way of really saying, we did this properly. There was no cheating or taking shortcuts. Right alongside it now we see 3 glyphs together, very rare at the Gosford glyphs, because I've mentioned before, most of these glyphs are done in singular text. One glyph is one word, but not this one. This is the word interned. And so far we have the manlike one prepared in the right way, interned, and then we see this leg coming up. And of course, that's a very important part of the glyphs in the way that this is not the letter B as the Egyptian alphabet tells us. Being a pictograph, it has more to say. This is this place. So once again, this is suggesting the manlike one prepared in the right way, boldly, interned in this place. Next we see a little box with a gap at the bottom that's sort of keeping it from becoming an entire box. And of course this is the word for house. Above it a dash for spirit. Coming up on its right, the square for P. And we see a little pen there or jug, which means place for. So once again, what we're seeing here is the manlike one prepared in the right way, interned in this place, in this house of spirit, put in. And so what we're looking at here is a sentence that's telling us a little bit about who it is and what's happening there. So I'll just go right back to the beginning. It's talking of the man-like one, and it really means it. If this was a man they were talking about, it wouldn't say that. The fact it says man-like one is another clue, giving us some ideas that Khufu was actually a lady, not a man at all.
You did go into it a little bit the first time around, sharing other evidence to support that
Wonderful.
King Khufu was actually a woman.
Yeah, good. Okay, so directly underneath this end, it's telling us this. Here it's we can see this round circle with a bold square in it just to our right, and so on. So underneath, what this is saying is it's telling us that the ruler took a voyage from the or her land, in which what we see there is a line with some dots under it, indicating the land. But then we see this little wiggle here suggesting not or a negative. And then we see the circle on our right. So this is a second sentence underneath suggesting that the ruler sailed from her land and is not ever going to get home. So it finishes with the circle on the right. And this is the common glyph for homeland. And I just want to flip to another picture next, and here is another picture. This one here is an example from Egypt itself. You notice right in the middle of that picture we see the circle again and the cross, And this time, of course, it's tilted over. This is the glyph for foreign land. So what we've just seen in that previous picture was a little bit there about Khufu being in, or Khufu not being able to get back to her land. What we see here now is a prayer, little.
Your audio is going in and out, and it's much better if you sit forward at the very least.
All right. Any more forward, I'm going to be sitting on this thing. Okay. Can't imagine how I can shout it louder. Okay, so once again, what we've just seen was in the previous photo, some talk of Khufu not getting to her homeland. And this here is a prayer that was found in a tomb back in Egypt from the time of Khufu herself. And here what we're seeing is this is a prayer. And this is created on a clay tablet and comes from a cotton bobbin sized print. And what this actually says is, the greatest god Khnum, Khufu, well actually it says greatest god king Khnum, Khufu. What if that little thing there works? Khufu. But it goes on to suggest that Khufu in heaven, greatest god king Khnum, protect the stone tomb in the foreign land. So I've got a pointer now. So here we go. Watch this. This here is a little flag or axe-looking device. This here is pure. This here is K. What we can't see, but we can see them on this side, is two lines. It's the term Num or Khnum. So here we've got purest king god Khnum, Khufu. Heavenly protect Horus in heaven, or Horus of gold, king god purest Khnum, in the stone tomb in the foreign land. But get this, the ibis, Thoth. This is talking of Thoth. So once again, in the previous thing, what we've seen was, and if I can just flick back to that, I shouldn't have flicked anything. In the previous thing, what we got to see was the glyph for homeland, and talking of it from that side. And here we are in Egypt. So here we are talking of homeland in this pic. And if we go back to the other one, you can see again if we go back to the other pic, we can see then very clearly what they've got in common. And Kath's just trying to help me with something here, arrows and things. So anyway,
when the cross in the circle is upright, it means homeland, and when it's tilted, it means foreign land.
It does, yeah. So once again, here we are talking of foreign land. So here's a circle on its side. So what we're seeing is two direct pieces of evidence, one on one side of the world, one on the other, both talking about the same thing, and narrowing it down to being, of course, with the ibis here in the land of Thoth, which of course is the land of Dijet's Nefru, Australia. So we might just go to the next pic and perhaps see what we can see there. Again, just adding bulk to the story. This is a great piece. You know, here we're talking of this is really old language, of course, and here we see what looks like the Sphinx, and it sort of is. This is an early interpretation of Ra, and what we're seeing here is we can see a little stickman in there, and what this is saying is really that man and that Sphinx there, and the line underneath it are suggesting he is now one with Ra, and there's only one way that's going to happen. You're going to be dead. So directly above it, again, we see a glyph for age or years. This glyph here often is done this way with just one little tag hanging off its side. This one has four. So one tag means year, two tags means plural, years, four tags means many years. And alongside it, of course, is the glyph for a human or huh. So this is saying old human or old man. So the old man is one with Ra, and above we have then the old man, and we can see just above a small little thing there indicating spirit, the old man with spirit, and then it goes on to show us Horus of gold being means heaven. You know that this guy's dead, and so this is just one small part of the glyphs that is talking of of Didi himself, the old man, 110 years old, and oh, here we go. Here's another lovely one. So again, just adding more body to the story today. I talked a lot about the great glyph of terror, and there it is, right there in the middle. And you can see how dramatic that thing's drawn, and or chaos. Yeah, so this is the glyph chaos, but shown in terror in this bold fashion here. And so here, what we're seeing is that chaos with great work, and this thing here is an anvil showing hard work, as being a blacksmith would be. So once again, this is suggesting chaos with great hard work. We turned around, and then we see to the right this figure of a turned, what do you want to call that, line or so on. So once again, we see chaos with hard work. We turned around. And this is part of the area where it's talking of what happened next, which of course was the disaster. The ship's turned upside down. Just carrying on that line there, we see once again that we've got with hard work, we turned around, and then this glyph here that we see is the glyph for storm. So it was bad enough there was chaos, but even this storm is marked in similar way to that chaos glyph, in the way of like it's got terror to it, and of course here then alongside, just slightly getting out of view, but comes up pretty quickly, the ship upside down and the royal emblem above. Now once again, with hard work, we turned around in the storm. The royal ship turned over. They got a big problem on their hands, and of course the chaos began, and here's one of those royal ships, of course, and the star above it we see just off our shores this time of year. This is the five-fingered star of Venus, or the beast star as it's called, aptly put there to show it coming over the horizon above the boats, indicating perhaps the fate. And just looking some more, and oh, this is wonderful. It'd be interesting to think what the UFO guys would make of this one. But what we're looking at here is we have a glyph here for this square glyph indicates many things. It indicates water often, a body of water. And then we see below it the large hand, the d or d. And placed together like this means down. And it means it in a big way, because once again, it's one of those glyphs here written bold. So it's saying down. And alongside it, so
it's like the Egyptian equivalent of all caps. Yeah.
All caps. Yeah. Well, cast down. Yeah. So sunk is the word too. Once again, we're talking about a body of water up here, and then we're talking about the glyph for DJ, or also used as a word down and placed this way. So this is saying down in the water. So what we just seen was with hard work, we turned around in the storm, and so the ship turned upside down, and then here we've got the glyphs sunk or pushed down. And and next we see coming up then is a knife, and this is a knife. It's a butcher's knife, and this is the word for slaughter. So this is saying once again, down and slaughtered. The storm slaughtered them, and they didn't stand a single chance. Poor things. And again, just to the right, we can see the ship upside down. So I wonder if I could flick the pictures to the left, and we'll just try that for you. Now we can read all this in one go. We'll go back 2 pictures, 3 perhaps. And so here we are. So watch this. Here, once again, it starts with the glyph for, I've forgotten what that means. Would you believe that? Chaos, yeah, I was going to say terror again. Yeah, so once again, what this is saying is chaos. We turned around in the storm. Hard work. We turned around in the storm, and the ship's turned upside down again and again. Sunk, slaughtered, and again.
What's that line though with all the crosses on it?
The line, yeah, down, ladder. It actually says, yeah, actually says this is what it really says. If we tried to say that, but this is saying down. That's what a ladder looked like, by the way, in 4,580 years ago. So a ladder like that would be used to lower somebody into a tomb, for example. But often used as placed down, as you'll see a glyph for a ladder, and indicating that. So good question, you know. Once again, this one's one of my favourites. It doesn't say a great deal. Well, it sort of does. What it's really saying is this is the glyph for the word bright or golden or bright, really. You know, so bright. And of course, this is one of those ones that the UFO enthusiasts all reckon is a UFO. Well, there's not a great deal of technology involved in that, of course. It's just a word. So what we're looking at is bright, and here, of course, that flag which indicates God King. So this is a king that's ruling as a god here on earth. And so once again, brightest God King, the sitting God, and here's the God here. And what we have here is the bread loaf upside down, or and the dish, if we want to call that, indicating carried or ke. So here we're saying the brightest God King, taken and carried, and we might just go to the next photo. This is actually a continuation of that very sentence. So this is interesting. Just here, we can see that certainly something's being carried. This is a pot, and we talked earlier about a pot is for something to be put in or a place for. You could talk about a country with a pot like that, indicating it's the country for those people. So here's our pot, but this one's got legs. Of course, it's being placed. So put in and placed, and alongside we see a human offering in his hand, and of course coming up on the next on the right is the coffin. So this is indicating that the bright God King is being placed into and carried, offered into, and on the right is the coffin. And down below, this is really interesting. We can see that little caterpillar with like a set of lips going across it, you know, a kiss. Can you see that there?
I would have said wings, but okay.
What would you call it?
I thought they were wings.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm always looking for a good example of words to better describe this thing. But of course, what we're looking at in the middle with the little round circles, this is the glyph indicating her or humans. And this is often used to talk of a human. And behind it, we see the wing, which is really also a spoken mouth. So this is the glyph for the word or the sound r. And of course the human-looking glyph is her. So her is how you could almost say this, you know. And so what this actually is, however, this is pointing to these children. This was the choice that Jephthah used when talking of the Aboriginal people here. And so what he's saying here is above is that the ruler has been placed into his coffin, But here it basically now says the Aboriginals, but then alongside it, this is the word for protect. And so this is a really important set of glyphs because it's almost a contract between the Aboriginals there and the Egyptians. And once again, it's suggesting that the ruler placed in, offered by the humans into the coffin, the Egyptians, I presume, and then it goes on to say, Didi's people, or the Haween, protect. And that's still the case to this day, that his people there do protect that site.
So this is part of the evolving story that's happened since you came out with this information, is that you've actually been put in touch with Didi's descendants who
Yes,
still
I
to
have.
this day know that area is in fact a tomb and protect it.
Yeah, well, they do now. Fortunately, of course, before this, it was a mystery. It was known that that place is important because, of course, that's a sacred site. Not the glyphs. Well, the glyphs is part of it, but the glyphs is just a couple of 100 meters within inside a massive sacred site that covers tens and tens of acres. So the people there, Didi's people, of course, they have this set of massive glyphs inside of their sacred site. So they understood it that some sharing had taken place, and they honoured that sharing all these thousands of years by protecting that site. But of course, they didn't realise what it really was. The idea of Egyptians coming from Egypt and so on, that over time had been diminished immensely. Of course, in the end, being totally destroyed by the interruption of white men in the 19th century, as industry came to this area and it just devastated the population there. They shot thousands more were ill from disease and so on. And of course, many were sent away to other places to work on plantations, completely interrupting the passing down of storage of this area. And this was lost. So again, the people there to this day, they knew that it was an important place because some sharing had to go on for this to exist in this very sacred land, or very sacred site. But it was all this, what I'm explaining to you now, was new to them too. And I've got to say,
I've got two questions that keep coming up for me, and it's sort of interrupting the flow of the story itself. But in terms of technology used to create these glyphs, what's the accepted form at this point?
Of tools, do you mean?
Yeah, these are as old as you say, over 4,000 years old, and they've weathered in that area for long. And some of these are very deep etchings. How the hell? I mean, it wasn't done with a little rock, a pointy rock, surely.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of it was, yes. Pointy. See, the rock that we're looking at here, of course, is sandstone, much softer than some rocks. A harder rock can penetrate sandstone quite easily. So,
but I would have thought it would survive. Sandstone, like you say, is incredibly soft. I've had it crumble in my hands.
That's right, yeah. And yet the glyphs were meant to last for eternity. That's what Jeff Thor did, because it was important. The magic in the words of the glyphs weren't just made to last 500 years. He was trying to make this last for eternity. So these glyphs were, and still are, very, very deep. The sort of tools they used was stone chisels, wooden mallet, and of course they used copper quite a bit, the Egyptians. So they would have had chisels that were copper as well. And things like copper are excellent to use on stones like sandstone. Sandstone, if I hit it with my carpenter's chisels, they would just shatter. Copper seems to take some of the impact and doesn't create the shattering on sandstone. So they were placed very, very deep. In some places, they're not so deep now because they've had 4,500 years of water running over the top of them. But I hope that helps to answer your question. What tools did they use? They used copper and harder stone chisels with wooden mallets and dug them in very deep to last all of time.
Okay, that brings up another question, all of time, because what came out of the conversation we had last time was that according to Egyptian tradition, because Khufu was not in her homeland at the time of her death and not able to go through the traditional burial ritual and be placed where she was meant to be placed, it meant bad news for Egypt.
It did, for the planet.
So part of the process that they went through here, I think the words you used were, it froze time.
It did, yeah. Once again,
go into
yeah, okay. Well, what happened was this. When a ruler died, if correct protocol wasn't followed, yes, it was going to bring negative things. Now, for a ruler to die and go to their version of hell would bring the worst of things, and this is what had happened. So once again, in the glyph that we see for chaos, and if we go back to that again, what it means is this: that Khufu being killed, like you say, away from ceremony. It was impossible to do the ceremony here. She was destined now. She was going to hell. It was only whatever Gosford could come up with that was going to stop that from happening. Now, if she would have gone to hell, chaos would have ruled on the planet for eternity. And so Gosford, when he did this work, he wasn't just saving his king. He was saving the planet Earth. That's how much it meant to him, and that's why getting this right was such a necessary thing. And we never did get to see the glyph of chaos there. I was looking forward to going back to that, and so once again we go back to it. There we are. Here she is, chaos. So now I've told you that. Now you know that this chaos is representing that the entire world would be in chaos. You can see why it's written so bold. So Gosford's answer to all this was to save his queen from slipping into eternal hell was to stop time. It was the only way. By stopping time, then of course he didn't just save her, he saved the planet Earth in his mind. And so of course he called to that site, that greatest of gods, Amun-Ra. And Amun-Ra, of course, is the god, the combined god of Ra and Amun. Combined together, then this makes the most powerful god of all. This god controls time. So on the walls there, we see the wonderful glyph of Amun-Ra, known as Anubis to those who don't know, understandably. But there's Amun-Ra summoned to that site to stop time and hold this place to stop Khufu slipping to hell and saving the world at the same time. So again, that's why the glyphs are so deep. And you can see here on these glyphs here just how deep they are. And this is 4,500 years later. So all the glyphs look like this at one stage, but this is the eastern wall. This is the wall facing towards the sea. And it really is just a wall. There's nothing behind this. It's just a drop-off. When I turn around and I look at what we call the western wall, of course, it's not the case. The western wall is actually a bank, and it's a bank to a large incline of land that goes back for a couple of acres. And what's happened is for 4,500 years, that wall, on many good days, is actually a waterfall. And it's basically almost wore the glyphs away. In fact, I'd be surprised if on the western wall those glyphs lasted another 500 years. They're nearly gone now, many of them, which leads many people to look at the glyphs and say, oh, that side is older than that side. But of course, it's all you're going to do is climb up the top and have a look and see which way the water goes, But so that should clear up, any misconceptions of why some glyphs deeper than the others. They were all deep because this had to last eternity, but on the western wall, it's a waterfall. So 500 years left to go. Khufu the spell is broken, and it's every man for himself. And so we'll just keep flicking along. So once again, this morning, what I've been doing here is just to go into some of these glyphs to add more body, because all of us are really interested in what these things say, you know. And again, so just flicking through, that's exactly what we're getting as we go, you know. I hope you are anyway. One more. And so here's a wonderful picture, you know, and I love talking about this. Of course, this is Khufu herself. And this one picture shows how fickle ordinary history really is, you know. And what we're looking at here is this is a statue called, I don't know what it's called actually, it's just a statue, but the figures in this is Seneb, the dwarf we see above Khufu here. And lovingly to his side, you see his wife. So this is commonly called a statue of Seneb and his wife. And for some reason, this statue, although well referenced and well known in archaeological and historic circles, this statue isn't talked of very often at all. It seems it's going through some sort of being suppressed. And why it is we're looking at Khufu on the right, the white figure, compared to the darker skinned figure on the left, her brother Jeffrey. And beside them, it tells very clearly in hieroglyphs, simple hieroglyphs, who these people are and their names. And what we're seeing here is to the left, the boy there. Here it's indicating his cartouche or his throne name. And this is the name Jeffrey. And the girl on the right-hand side, we see her cartouche. This is the name Khufu. And to many, of course, this is a big surprise. You know, history tells us Khufu being a man. I don't know why. I've never found a piece of evidence yet that says Khufu was a man. But for some reason, history has run with it, and
the fact that she was the ruler, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, I know why they did it, but I don't understand why modern history can't see what I can see so easily, you know. So what we're looking at here is on this these indicators on the side of Khufu here, the cartouche. It says this. If I can just point to this, and that's a pointer, isn't it? I've got my hand now. So here, what it's saying. I'll go over to the brother first. Jeffrey. So we see a little duck thing here, and what this is saying is this is child, is the term child. It's really wild, you know, easily known. Everybody knows that about hieroglyphs that has anything to do with it. Underneath, we see a little serpent, you know, a snake, if you like. And this is a shortcut for a name, and it's the name Snefru, which has got this serpent in it. And so this is the sound f, like that. So often, rather than write a whole heap of things, they'll write one small part, giving a hint to what it is. So this is saying child of Snefru, Jeffrey. Now, when we go to this side, watch this. Again, it says child of Snefru, but look in the middle. Can we see this little bread loaf upside down?
I can see that there's something there, but I can't make it out, yeah.
All right. No way of making that bigger, I suppose. If I hit something, I'll just make a mess. Another day, perhaps. But what this is actually saying, because this is a real statue, this is saying child, but that little glyph there says girl. And they nominating Khufu as a girl. It says child, girl of Snefru. When it's a boy, on the other side, it says child of Snefru. They never mentioned the fact it was a girl. When it was a boy, you were allowed to be a boy without any further tags, but not a girl. It was always given the tag, the identity, child, girl of Snefru, Khufu. So once again, this statue was found in the tomb of somebody from Khufu's time. In fact, it was found in the lady there, the lady above, the wife of Seneb. It was found in her tomb. She loved Khufu and Djefri. She was the lady that brought them up. Seneb, her husband there, was the official who was in charge of all things to do with the children of Snefru. It was his job and her job to bring them up. And he did a great job of it too. So he actually educated Khufu, this man. So a wonderful piece, you know, but what I'd like to say is, again, that this statue, of course, is being suppressed. This is the only statue of Khufu, with Khufu's name on it anyway, found from Khufu's time. Another statue takes its place as being a statue from Khufu's time, and of course that's the little 6-inch piece that came from some remains of a building from a much later time, incorrectly attested as being a picture of or a statue of Khufu, and from Khufu's time. This coming from a tomb is from Khufu's time. This is Khufu. That's her as a girl, and a child alongside her brother Geoffrey. Oh, now, okay, some more clues. We see here, this is the Gosford Glyphs, and that's my right hand you see there, or left hand, and and this is where I'm taken from my video where I'm starting to read. And what I've got my hand over, of course, is the crown of Egypt, and so this is indicating the ruler of Egypt. But just to the side of my finger, again, we see that bread loaf. Can you see that there?
Yeah.
So this is saying, again, ruler of Egypt, but look at that, cleverly, again, girl, and sneaking it in. If this was a boy, we wouldn't say that. We just have the crown, and that's that. But there it is. And we'll go to another now, and you'll see it again. Here's the part, isn't it? Again, this is the Gosford Glyphs, and this is the part of Khufu. And above here, we can see the bee and the stalk indicating ruler of Egypt. But look at this. They did it again. Jeff thought was very clever. Right there, he snuck in that little red loaf again, girl. Constantly giving us indicators to the fact that his sister there is a girl. And he was very clever, very, very, very clever man, you know. And obviously he wanted to do his sister great justice, you know, he's king. And also, while I'm on this particular cartouche, I might tell you a little bit more about this. Over here is, we see the indicator for the word purist, which is this round piece here with the piece coming off and two little crosses at the top. So this is purist. And what this is saying, this is a sentence on the glyphs, is actually saying Khufu, along with 100 of the purest, most efficient souls. And but where I was going with this, of course, was I was showing you the girl link. So we'll go to another photo now and see if there's any more clues in here about was Khufu a girl. Well, here we go again. We can see it a little bit clearer now. So again, the ruler of Egypt, Khufu, and just here snuck away there a girl. And so we might go to another pic and see what else we can find. Oh, here again. So just here we see, and this will get all the lesser enthusiasts looking at glyphs over the weekend excited. Looks like a UFO, doesn't it? Of course, we know it isn't. It's a word for bright, and alongside is the crown of Egypt. So once again, the brightest ruler. But then again, next to it, girl again. And so many times, you know, throughout the Gosford glyphs, you know, it gives these indicators. Once again, I could never ever find one that said Khufu was a man ever. This is a classic piece, and one of my favourites again from the glyphs. And that pointer there that I'm using, it's yeah, just the closest thing I can get at hand. But what it's actually on at the moment there, as I'm pointing, that's an egg pointing to above Khufu's coffin. And an egg used in this way is often indicating magic, but it's also used to indicate female or girl. And who, of course, was a girl, and she was a girl very interested in magic. And it would seem that it's placed above Khufu's coffin in this way, indicating exactly that. That here is Khufu, you know, dead, placed into her coffin, but placing above it the glyph for magic and girl at the same time. Very clever, but another indicator again, you know, pointing to Khufu being a girl. And we'll go to another pic and have a look. And, well, this is interesting. I included this because I think this is very important, and I think a lot of people should take heed over this. This is a curse. And if we've ever seen an Egyptian curse, believe me, this is one, you know. And this here is the god Zeth. Now,
Sorry, can you say that again?
Zeth, S-E-T-H.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? And get it clear, you know. But what it is just above Zeth, here we see this sort of Y-shaped thing. Looks like a stick, doesn't it? And it is really. But what it is this is the glyph for death. Now, keep in mind, Egyptians didn't really have a concept for death. They figured that, of course, you went into the afterlife, you were born again. So you never really died. But, of course, when they killed their enemy, they died. And this is the glyph they used for that. And so what it is, this is the god of terror herself. This god is known in Egyptian mythology to have once almost wiped out the human race. And here she is, placed at the Gosford Glyphs with the word death above her head, a threat to those who would pass this and do any harm. And you don't have to physically attack the place to do it harm. To give it lack of respect and walk all over the dead there would be probably something that might bring you a little bit closer to you know, enjoying what this spell and that curse, you know, really has the full potential to do. I would never cross this glyph. You know,
does it come across as a magical protection for the place, or is it?
Yeah, it's one of the many things they're giving this place protection. There's a number of gods, and showing you this glyph here now, this is where I'm leading you, is to point out some of the gods they're doing the protecting, and this is the most vicious one of those. You know, once again, this is the god that once almost destroyed the human race, so here's another. So yes, so here we go. Now we're going into the gods at this place. Look at this one. This is fascinating. This is probably one of the oldest depictions of the fish god that we've seen anywhere on Earth. And what it is the fish god known as Enki, Elki, all sorts of names go along with the fish god. But there was a time when the fish god had no name. It was talked of, but there was never a name. And this is from that time. So it had a description instead. And the description was this, that the fish god was a being with scales and or fins, a human head, and a fish's head protruding from above it. And here it's displayed at the Gosford Glyphs for a number of reasons. It's here it's displayed in homage. It's suggesting that along the journey, the sea they travelled along was the jurisdiction of this fish god. So they were very clever. They drew the foot, as we see, and we know that to mean this place.
Yeah.
They drew a little pyramid, and they would always add this to things saying part of Egypt. And keep in mind, this is the land of Djed Snefru. It carries the ruler's name. This is part of Egypt. So once again, this place, part of Egypt, and then we see the fish god. So they placed it here in honor, you might say, if they journeyed over the fish god's jurisdiction. And so later in the glyphs, it's mentioned a great number of times. So here's an example of the fish god as we know it from, say, Sumeria. And this is perhaps 2,000 years later. And you can see here how far things had become advanced when it came to drawing this sort of thing, you know. And but within 2,000 years, this is the evolution it took. So this god by now has got a name. Now it's called, I think a lot of people look at this and say there's Enki and recognise it straight away. But we can see the fish, again, you know, on his back, and the human head, and the fish head.
Would they not possibly be holding this god responsible?
Well, Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps a good point. But there it is, responsible, or whether it's been honoured, well put there on the Gosford glyph. And it's very rare to see, once again, because the glyphs are one of the oldest, sets of written text there is on the planet. And even this one we're looking at now here, this coming from Samaria or somewhere like that, this thing is only 2,000 years old. If we go back to look at the fish god there at the glyphs, there's the same god much earlier in its evolution, 4,500 years old. And 2,000 years later, looks like that. So we'll move on along a bit further now. Oh, here we go. There's that wonderful god, Ra. And last week when we talked of this, of course, we couldn't see Ra in the photo. So I've deliberately put them together like this. So far we've seen the fish god. We've seen, what was his first god? And now here's another one. So what we're seeing here, this is a twin god in the way that when that sun there is shining upon Ammon, then of course that manifests him alive here on earth. So the presence of this glyph puts Ra there between the walls. And again, we talked about this last week, but just standing there between the walls at this point, you can actually feel the power of that glyph. Very, very, very much alive. So he's doing a great job. This guy here is actually holding that place in time, and of course protecting it as well. And
Colin, we're just going to take a 2-minute break. Yes, and we'll be back very, very shortly. You can leave your camera and everything happening as is.
I will. Okay, there's a lot to talk about there on that.
2 minutes.
Okay, enjoy. Be great.
Spent a lifetime stuck in silence, afraid you'll say something wrong. If no one ever hears it, how we gonna learn your song? So come on, come on, come on, come on, you gotta. Come on, you gotta. Baby, we're a little different, there's no need to be ashamed. You got the light to fight the shadows, so hiding it away. Come on, come on. I wanna sing, I wanna shout, I wanna scream till the words dry out. So put it all on the page, I'm not afraid. We can read all about it, read all about it.
Thank you and welcome back. Thank you for indulging us for having a break. Colin, last time we spoke, and a little bit briefly here already today, we talked a bit about freezing time.
We did.
And what was indicated was that essentially a magic spell was placed on this place.
Yes, it was.
To freeze time or loop time. And this is cycles of time and looping of time is something that Dee and I have discussed on many shows over recent months. Cycles of time. And there's at least suggestion or information coming out from a variety of sources that says that that's exactly where we've been. We've been in this, instead of time sort of spiraling as it should, that we've been locked into a loop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this repeating pattern.
You think our friend Jethro had something to do with that?
Well, I'm beginning to wonder whether he's the culprit, yeah.
He might well be. Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit more to that?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, well, of course, what was in Jethro's mind was the great importance of saving us all. Once again, if Khufu would have gone to hell, then chaos would rule on Earth for eternity. And so he took this task with great importance, as you can imagine. So, but in saying that, it didn't take a lot of text to do it. It was just simply this, just by simply placing Amun there, placing Ra there, shining on Amun. This is as good as writing an entire encyclopedia about the thing to bring that spell about. So he, in the common flow of the Gosford glyphs, done in simple manner, here it is. Simply put, this is a spell, just that one thing you're seeing there. You'd expect to look at a spell, wouldn't you, and see all sorts of incantations and formulas and so on. But they were more advanced than that. The Egyptians were advanced with every primary thing, from what they could do with sand, water, sound, and so on. Spells were the same. They were so advanced that they didn't need to go into writing an entire text on the thing. So once again, what is he doing there? He's holding that place in time. Did it affect the entire planet? I wouldn't be surprised. I know that it certainly seemed to have affected the evidence is to do with this case, and we can call it a case. Let's call it a cold case, because the evidence is about this case, perhaps the most documented event in history. Sure, you've never heard of it before.
I'll also explain why the glyphs have actually lasted so long.
I think so, very much so, yeah. And of course, those other evidences that are to do with it as well. Now that I point them out, you'll see them all over the world. And of course, as this year progresses, I will be pointing them out, and we'll all get to know them. What an interesting solution to the problem, wasn't it? That Jethro came up with. When faced with what do you do now? All this long way from home, he's keen surely to go to hell, and he came up with this as a solution. Incredibly clever. And so once again, why I got this bit up, not the bit, but that particular thing was I was looking at the gods. Here's another god for you. This is a god Ptah, and this is really interesting. This one tells me a lot about the site itself, the physical attributes of that site. It's been said by the dreamers and what have you, the guessers again, that the Gosford glyphs used to have a roof on it. And it was a cave, and apparently in the 60s or something, they say the roof fell in. Well, I say, no, it didn't. It never had a roof. And why I say that is because of this glyph. Now, this glyph is the god Ptah in mummy form. We see the god Ptah in another form, but here is Ptah, the protector god of the dead, in mummy form. Now, this god can't exist in daylight in this form. And yet here it is at the Gosford glyphs in broad daylight. And that would make you think, well, must have had a roof on it then to protect the mummied Ptah from the direct light of sun. But this glyph is placed all on its own at the bottom of the glyphs in a or just under a bulbous piece of rock which is facing out. So it's actually tucked down and hidden away out of the daylight on purpose, and that's the only way that this mummied car can exist in daylight. It's supposed to exist only in the dark. So, if the Gosford glyphs would have had a roof on it, this would have been right in front of my face, but it wasn't.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
It's down deep and hidden away, but plays a big part, in the protection that's going on there. So we have the god Ra protecting them from moving through time. Here we have the mummied Tar protecting the dead ones there, and we might just flick again and see what else we got. Oh no, go back. That's nothing. But then what we see is all over the place is here's Tar again. So no, it's not. Forget it. All over the place, what we see there are the Horus eyes, and of course a Horus eye is you can see one as we flick around. Funny that it's the most common glyph there, would you believe? And here we are, we can't see one. But what it is the Horus eye, of course, is a protection in itself. The Horus was Khufu, so the king was Horus on earth, and even when dead, they were still the ruler. So it would seem once again, Khufu locked in time. That Horus eye that we see all over the glyphs, looking at you from every angle there, that's Khufu looking at you there. Khufu can actually see through that eye, and Khufu himself or herself, is playing a part in protecting that place as the god Horus. So once again, what we've seen is we see Tar there protecting the place. We see Zeth, the god that once destroyed almost all of humanity. We see Ra, Tar, Horus Eye. So there's a great deal of number of gods there placed doing their thing. They're protecting that place. So that's just a little bit about the gods. I wonder if I might just keep flicking to the side. I don't know where I'm going. We'll just keep flicking around just to see. I see we're done with those pictures, are we? So other than that, all right. I still didn't get as many pictures up as what I would have liked, by the way. So, of course, I can ramble on all day about this sort of thing without that.
Well, let's go a little bit into it in another direction, because in the past, when I've looked into the glyphs, the information that came out of there was that, what we are told in school, what we learn is that humanity started in Africa and spread out across the world from Africa.
Yep.
What was indicated last time I looked down this particular road was that wasn't the case, and that life originated here in Australia and spread out from Australia. And part of the support for that was indications of Aboriginal culture here showing itself in Egypt and other places. There was DNA evidence. There was the couple whose names escapes me, who came up with the original theory that life originated in Africa. I wrote a book about it. It was accepted by academia, put into our schools and never questioned. They themselves apparently, what could you say, reneged on that claim after further investigation, and wrote a second paper supporting the idea that life originated here in Australia, but that was ignored. So have you come across anything that would support that argument?
I have, yeah. To understand the sharing that went on, with the Egyptians and Australian original culture, I had to do massive amounts of research, not to just understand it, but to really get in there and feel it, You can't, stuff like this, you can't just look at it and read it as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. You really have to know what they were feeling, what they were thinking. And of course, Aboriginal culture was no different. For me to understand what influence it meant, the culture is mentioned so much here at the Glyphs. And the fact, of course, that, like Dee Dee is an Aboriginal, of course, I had to bring that to culture. And there's only one way. You really have to immerse yourself in culture. Well, in fact, it will immerse you. If culture thinks that you have something to offer that's positive and you're supposed to be there for that, the culture will just envelop you. And this is what happened to me. I was very, very fortunate, to be able to get to understand and appreciate culture. And so in that now, as I started to look about in my research and so on, not just at the Glyphs, but in all of the world of research regarding the ancient times, now with this great insight that culture had given me, I started to see reflections of that all around the planet. And from one end to the next, it seemed there was no end to it. Now, sometime in the future, once I have a stronger footing to shout from and the Glyphs are done and dusted, I'll go into this in a great more detail again, because it really needs defending. But it would seem this. It would seem that as in all these places like Gobi Teki and Peru, even Scotland, would you believe? Here I'm seeing researchers digging up information about the gods of the times and individuals, say hieroglyphs, even, would you believe? But, they were widely used, from everywhere, right around the planet. But what I'm seeing is, there's no doubt about it, direct evidence that they all evolved from the foundations of Australian culture here in the land of Djed Snefru. And of course, the Egyptians, they knew this too. And we did touch on this in the last episode, and we'll go back to it now, in the way that it would seem that the Egyptians, around the time of King Huni, came back to Australia for whatever their purpose. In fact, I know what it was, but that they came back to Australia and they recognised those first early foundations in their own religion. And recognising that, they embraced that. And so much so that they actually adopted, the fundamental part of Aboriginal, beliefs back into Egypt religion, and completely adopted it. They became Aboriginal all over again. It was amazing to see. And of course, the evidences of that we see in Egypt's known history, in the way of Khufu has been blamed for closing the temples. Well, it might not have been Khufu that did that, but yes, the temples were closed. Their entire religion shut down, was completely reorganised and started again. With what we know as the Sun culture, and which was they brought back the Aboriginal belief.
So you say they shut everything down once they rediscovered their roots.
They did, they closed their temples, and of course, that was a big thing in Egypt. That would be like doing that today here in modern Australia. To kick out the Catholics or the Muslims or somebody. It would be as equivalent to doing something as large as that. But they did it. And what happened, of course, was Egypt had an industry. The priest economy was run on their selling of mummies for almost a sacrifice, because of course that's what they did. They mummified everything. They mummified dogs, cats, monkeys. They at one point wiped out the entire fauna of Egypt and the surrounding areas, just using them for mummies to be offered to the gods, as a gift. And it would seem that, of course, Aboriginals wouldn't stand for that. And as Aboriginal culture took over Egypt, that became a no-no, and it was banned. And that industry reacted. Those priests selling those things at $50 a head or whatever it was that they sold them for, now the priests had no income. for the temples and so on, which was the backstay of Egypt before this. So in the end, a revolution came about that chucked Khufu's family line off the throne, and of course the priests took over again, started up their industry, and went back to mummifying everything that could possibly breathe, walk, or existed on Earth. In fact, for the first 20 years of British Rail in Egypt, they used the mummies, animal mummies, for fuel. There was no wood. 20 years. So that's how many millions and millions and millions of $50 mummies were out there,
how long the period was between shutting everything down and then the priests gaining control again?
Yeah, well, we can look to the Westcar Papyrus for clues in that. It would seem that two rulers after Khufu, then the time came that the priests took over, and of course then they became pharaohs, no kings or queens as we know them, and now rulers were elected through the priests.
Talking over each other, it keeps lagging. Khufu's reign was obviously incredibly significant, and yet
it was.
Her presence was essentially wiped from Egypt. But if this is what happened as a result during her reign, the reintroduction of culture, the reintroduction of their roots, the complete closure of the temples and reassessment of their current practices, that's huge.
Massive.
And yet she's not talked about, or he's not talked about.
Yep, exactly. So you can imagine if Monsanto had their way, they'd only want to be talking about their products. They wouldn't want to be talking about anything else. And truth is suppressed. And this isn't new. It was done then as it is today. So once again, about this culture, this is how far and how deep it was to them. But of course, Aboriginal culture has many features which make it what it is. And of course, one of those things is of course, the equal balance of feminine and masculine in all things, whether it be a journey, a job, something you might build, a place, a name, and so on. The equilibrium of masculine and feminine must be held at all time. And of course, what happened was King Khufu, father passed away, Snefru. King Khufu's mother took over the reins and ruled for some time on behalf of Khufu. When Khufu became of age and took the throne, now it meant that two women had ruled in a row, and upsetting the balance of male-female or masculine-feminine. And it was so important to Egyptians to stick to Aboriginal culture and all those things that it meant, the masculine and the feminine, but it was so important to them that this is why they call Khufu a man. Only in text, when talking of important decisions and ceremony.
It didn't happen during Khufu's reign, though, that it happened before, in terms of this reintroduction and...
Yes. So by the time Khufu was ruled, this new system was well placed. King Huni would be perhaps about 80 to 100 years before Khufu. So Aboriginal culture had around 100 years head start by the time Khufu came to rule. And so she was the name. Pardon?
That was her father.
No, her father was Snefru. Khufu's, let me think about it, grandfather would have been Huni.
Huni, okay.
Yes, Huni giving birth to Rahotep, and Norafit, his wife, gave birth then to Didi, would you believe? And it gets really confusing there. Let me think about that before I explain it. But yeah, so it seems, once again, that Aboriginal culture was so deep in belief in Egypt that they went to these extremes of calling Khufu a girl. I should say a man, to bring back the balance, the fact that her mother had ruled as as a woman, and because the father had died, Khufu wasn't married at this stage, so there's no male there either. So what they did was they came up with an imaginary male king, and of course that king was called Khufu. So Khufu's correct name is Princess Meritites. This is her name, and it's very, very, very easy to find evidences of Princess Meritites in Egypt as the mother of what we know as to be Khufu's children, and such things. You know? So, but once again, yeah, I can't emphasise that enough. That Khufu had two identities. Her female side was Princess Meritites. Her male side was King Khufu. And this was enough to keep the balance of the song lines and Aboriginal lore, and bring a positive rule to her reign. Ask me a question while I get my head around some more of that, if you like.
But I mean, have you seen anything that we could call scientific evidence? Like DNA, like, or are there stories? Are there glyph stories that tell about the remembering, the re-emergence of Aboriginal culture in Egypt?
Yeah, many. When we look at the early names of the consort wives of the previous kings, Huni, Rahatep, Snefru, and so on, it seems that each of them took an Aboriginal bride, and you can see in their names that those names are still evident today in Australia, in culture. Those names are still handed out. So once again, how some of this came about was the Egyptians rediscovered Australia, the land of the Djed Snefru, at some point, recognised that this was the house of God in their old beliefs, that this is the place where the moon settles, the god Thoth. So they came here and took a shortcut to become gods themselves by taking a second wife called a consort. They took that consort back to Egypt. They had their ordinary wife, but when they had this consort and they had children to this consort, this person from Australia, their offsprings were now children of God. So it would seem that Huni took a shortcut to make the royal family line gods, rather than waiting till they were dead and they got to heaven, because they bred with the children of God here in Australia, because now the offsprings of the royal family line become gods here on earth. And again, this is where we see in Egyptian text the flag appear next to the name of a ruler, which indicates God King. They became gods on earth by breeding with the Australian Aborigines. And again, once again, when we look at the family tree of people like Snefru and Khufu and so on, we see the Aboriginal names popping out all over the place. So we did an interesting experiment. There's a massive computer program called Rodvoid. Now, anybody can do this, and it's worthwhile to do it. Rodvoid is RODVOID. And it's a computer, Rodvoid. And you can do this now while I'm talking to you. And what it is that you can Google it. It's a computer program from, I believe, the Ukraine. And what it's for, it's designed for the search in genealogy. So if you and I wanted to find our auntie or uncle or our family line, we could employ this program. Later, it will cost, I believe, about $500 to use the program. At the moment, it's free. So what we did was we thought, okay, this apparently is the smartest computer on earth for doing this sort of thing. It can draw on all our computers all over the place from little bits of information and put them together, very much like NASA does, for its information on watching the universe. So anyway, so we put into Rodvoid some of these familiar names. We put in there Snefru, Didi, and so on. And to my amazement, what an incredible program. It showed very clearly the family line right back to Thoth. Would you believe that? It showed that Dee Dee, again, taken from Australia, a bride his father had, and his father before him, and so on. And so I hope somebody out there is putting that into their Google as I speak, and what you'll find.
Rod Ovid, R-O-D.
Rod Void. Yeah, Rod Void, R-O-D-V-O-I-D, Rod Void.
I'm finding something different. I'm finding R-O-D-O-V-I-D, Rod Ovid.
Oh, well, perhaps then, yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. So you're looking at that now, eh? Can you see?
Yeah, that says the world is closer than it seems, and then find the family tree of.
Yes, well done.
Name in there. So that's the right one?
Okay, yeah, put Dee Dee in there. Well, not Dee Dee, let's go, well, no, go Dee Dee. Put Dee Dee in there, D-Z. So D, J-E-D, D-Z. Or D-E-D-I will do, D-D. And just see
one?
D-D, D-E-D-I, simple as that, yeah.
D-E-D-I. Okay.
Yeah, and so apparently this is one of the smartest computers on Earth, and it can draw information from all over the planet, and it's very fast. I want to say. So I'm doing this once again. What I came up with was the entire family tree, and
the search is disabled.
Oh God, you wouldn't believe it, would you? Okay. No. Well, perhaps next time we talk, fortunately I saved them, and we can put that up.
Okay.
Yeah, I might suggest maybe it's gone past its free thing now. But other than that, while you're still trying, put in just another simple one, such as Hoonie, and see what you get, and it might not be, it might still be active for you. But as I say, I did save them anyway. Lucky I did by the sound of it, if it's not free anymore. So you asked me, is there any evidences, to that Australian link? I'd very much like to see a DNA test, from some of those early Egyptians that were the consort wives of Snefru and the others. I've no doubt that we'll find that these are 100% pure blood Aboriginal women. And it leads me to think, I hope this was a sharing that they were doing. I'd hate to think that Egypt back then was so rude to just barge in there and grab women and mate with them, to make their offspring's gods. So let's hope, that there was some sharing involved in that.
Is there anything to support that it wasn't mutual?
Yeah, there is actually, yeah. In culture, of course, is the story of the Battle of the Boomerangs, and it's told by the Gulabal people, and which come from the area, of course, of the east coast here in Australia. And the Battle of the Boomerangs tells of a friendship which was taken to the brink. And what happened was the people, the Aboriginal people, had a fight with their good friends, the Broom people. Broom as in motorcar, Broom, and these were the people from overseas. And anyway, a fight occurred, and a number of Aboriginals were killed. And anyway, they call it the Battle of the Boomerangs. It's still sung to this day. It's a passed down story that we can hear. And anyway, but it tells, yes, of a clash between the two. So,
but does it get more specific about who the other people were, other than just from overseas?
Well, when they talk of the Broom people, they're talking of the people from the north, from overseas. And but no, unfortunately, it doesn't say modern day Egyptians. It refers to them as the Broom people. So it's an indicator that perhaps.
To be honest, when you're in Australia, just about everything's north. So
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, unlike if you were the cannibals coming from from the east, a lot of that went too. So there are stories that there may have been a clash. So I don't know. We'll see as time progresses and the story comes out more. Of course, it couldn't have been a clash all the time. I think just at one point this came to a head, But
how old is that story? How do we know how far that goes back?
Yeah, it's 4,581 years ago, because it is the story of Dede himself.
Boomerang.
Yeah, it is the story of Dede himself. Actually, it's told by his people, his people that still live to this day, that sing that song to this day. So yeah, it's a very old song. It's not something from just a couple of years ago. They're singing about Dede, the spirit that won't rest. That's how he's known here. So yeah, it might not have always been a rosy friendship, you know. But as I say, yeah, that we're learning all the time, so more information will come out. But from what it seems so far, yes, you know, there was sharing, but eventually they fell out. And of course, you know, like Dede being killed, Khufu being killed, you know, things would have been pretty strange. But whatever the falling out was, it was enough. Of course, Egypt completely washed their hands of the land of Djed Snefru, and was never spoken of in text ever again, along with Khufu, you know, being cast into oblivion and having her identity completely destroyed as well. So why did
it makes sense that they would hold this land responsible for the death of their king?
Yeah, and of course this is the land of God, you know, and they wanted those other gods, those multitude of gods that over the thousands of years, you know, they created an industry with. They wanted them back. Well, not everybody, of course, but you know, those priests, those were the ones that held the power. You know, they wanted that industry back, and so of course they took it. You know, so we're seeing reflections of that in our modern world today. You know, we see, of course, our own governments being overcome by you know, the greed of industry. You know, corporations today, of course, you know, have got their you know, their roots deep into every part of our decision-making process. In fact, they got a 100-year head start on us, a bit like Khufu in her time, isn't it? So we see it still happening again today. You know, truths being hidden, you know, and so on. Look at the pharmaceutical company, people going missing everywhere, and so on. It's so it still goes on to this day. You know, it's an age-old thing. You know, industry over truth. You know. And of course, once again, they'll throw in misinformation. So we're seeing misinformation even now, you know, regarding the glyphs. Since, of course, I brought out the logic of the glyph and was able to explain it so well, you know, the translations, what it meant, you know, discovering the links back to Egypt. A step up has been made here in Australia to promote misinformation, and they're stepping it up pretty quickly. And it would seem that it borders on the science of Scientology, if you like, you know, that it works like this. If you want to divide a nation, and of course you feed them some bullshit and then continue to feed more to keep the argument going. And we're seeing that right now. Only over the last couple of days, again, one of those enthusiast film groups suggesting that the Gosford Glyphs wasn't done by humans, it was done by aliens and crystal UFOs. So apparently they made their presence known again, and yesterday they filmed the Glyphs. So there's, it looks like there's a new Scientology vid coming out in the near future. A terrible, terrible, terrible shame, you know, to see truth, you know, being cast into smoke and haze by these fictionist fools.
Well, when it comes to protecting the glyphs and that they've just been heritage listed, what was it? What piece of information, if anything in particular, was the final push for having success? Because it's been a long battle. I know that the original people, their pleas went unheard. Yeah. Claims like you've mentioned that it's evidence of a UFO site were dismissed as ridiculous. So what was it that finally got that site saved?
What was it? Well, actually, it was the good efforts of the people of that district, of Gosford and Woy Woy. And of course, there's a young man there working his way through politics. I forget his name. You might know him, perhaps. He's pretty famous in his area there. He's been quite a character. And he calls himself the protector, you know, of the Carry-On Forest. And he recently ran for the local electorate and was very successful. And But it seems that, you know, efforts by young men like this man and the people of Gosford and Woy Woy, and most importantly, of course, you know, culture itself, you know, they led the fight and were successful in, yes, having it taken from private hands, the builder that was about to build on it, and now it's been placed into the hands of the national parks, which isn't, of course, its last place where it needs to be. This site really needs to have international heritage. You know, our own government, you know, isn't a guarantee that they're going to protect truth at this site. This site, of course, shines light on many things that our own government might not be happy about. You know, their credibility is based on the fact that we discovered this land and so on. You know, when, of course, the site itself shows very clearly that this was a sovereign nation dealing with all the countries around it the entire time. So, God bless our government, but you know, yeah, even they would have a motive for suppressing this site if that was their wish. So the fact that it's in the hands of the national parks is part good news, but it's not really where this place needs to be. It needs international protection. Now this is
I mean, there are treaties written on kangaroo skins in Spain, Egypt. There's evidence all over the world of interaction with the original peoples here many, many years ago, long before supposedly.
Yeah, many. Yeah, that's right. But what's different about this one is it's so large and it's real, and you know, it can't be hidden away easily at all. You know, and of course it's in the public eye. You know, so I don't know if that helps protect it or if it makes it more of a target. You know, it's a bit of a worry. I personally can't wait till the day that this place is heritage listed by the United Nations and they put a roof over it and stop that water draining along the ground that's wearing it away so rapidly, you know, on one side. Something seriously needs to be done. And, you know, I keenly await that date, you know, and hopefully, some of my enlightenment will help to bring that forward more quickly.
Is there actually a push to address this to the United Nations? Not that I trust.
No, not at this point. No, there's not. There's no movement whatsoever. The whole thing is basically dead in the water. It's very hard for me to get a lot of support at a higher level on this. You know, academia doesn't want to know because, of course, they admit to themselves that how foolish they've been. On the other hand, government, of course, doesn't want to know because to them it means they have to spend money or whatever. And then, of course, we've got these UFO enthusiasts that are attracting bad attention and lessening the importance of this place. You know, so I've certainly got my work cut out for me. You know, to try and wade my way through that lot.
How has this? I mean, I know that last time we talked, you touched quite a bit on your own personal journey with this, how it started and what's been evolving. But
well, I hardly told a thing, really. I've got to say, you know, the personal journey to this is longer than the story on the walls, you know. And it's such a magical story, you know, what happened here, in the way that I was swept up by the spirit, the living spirit on that wall. You know that. If I went into that, and I would love to, you know, but if I told that story here, I'd probably lose credibility. And those enjoying correct history at the moment would wonder where I was coming from. But yeah, it is a wonderful story. You know, the way I was swept up by culture like that, and the way things fell in front of me everywhere I went. You know, it was no easy ride.
It's the story of how when you're on your path, synchronicities. You know. Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Oh. Let me share a little bit of it with you without getting too magical and as I say, losing credibility, you know, to those that just appreciate history. But here's one example. You know, early in the piece, of course, you know, I was introduced to culture in probably a dramatic way. In fact, you were there, Lisa. By chance, you and I, of course, met that night, didn't we? On the side of Mount Warning, and of course, I was there as a guest to introduce my story to a group of interested people. And looking about, I called them all, of course, a league of unusual gentlemen and ladies. But in that, of course, was a representative of culture.
That's a nice way of saying we were a bunch of crackpots in a tent.
I know, it's funny, wasn't it? But what a wonderful evening that was, you know. And,
it was.
Yeah. And of course, in that was a representative from culture. And of course, we don't talk names when we talk representative of cultures. Culture, of course, has been shot, killed, you know, for 200 years. And culture still fears that goes on today. And I tend to agree. So, however, you and I know who that was. And of course, that was a fine person from culture. But that person told me rules from day one, you know, like in a very assertive way. And of course, she told me, I said she, didn't I? That, of course, I had to find the descendants of that man on the wall there. I had to find Dee Dee's family line and explain it to them. And not an easy task to do.
Because at the time, I recall...
Yeah, I had to find, yeah, that's right, over 4,580 years, yeah, I had to track down Dee Dee's father's line and Dee Dee's mother's line and bring them together and explain the events on the walls to them. Now, when I was told that, of course, to me, that's an impossible task. How the heck am I going to find somebody through 4,500 years of time? And so, anyway, but I was assured that, don't worry, this will come to me, you know. But I couldn't appreciate that, of course. I'd only just come to culture. I didn't realise how strong the spirit was, you know. So, of course, I'm just going about my business. But at that same time, because culture put some rules on me, and they did, you know, I could no longer speak in a particular easy fashion, you know, otherwise things wouldn't be good for me. So what I did was I took a big turn in the direction of my research and my work on Gosford. What I did was I instantly dropped chasing history. And what we're doing today, we can call this chasing history, my sharing, you know. I stopped everything because, of course, we realised the importance of Dee Dee there, the chief and elder buried in that place. And I had to take a different turn. I had to now find these people somehow. It sounded so ridiculous. But what happened was this, an advert, well, not an advert, it was a cry for help. A cry for help came across my usual facey page from someone I'd never met in my life. And what it was it was two little old ladies out in the middle of Australia crying for help. They were out there trying to defend their land from the gas. Very much like you know, in Khufu's time, trying to, you know, the priests and their industry, you know, taking over the place. There's these two old ladies out in the middle of Australia trying to defend their land from the gas. And what had happened was all the men...
The gas companies wanting to do fracking.
Yes. Yeah. So we're in that area of, say, Karuna, outback New South Wales. And what happened was the men in the area had died, in their community, I should say, as often men do in Aboriginals. You know, they died very, very young. And what happened was there was no men left in the community, nobody to fix anything. And all their equipment was broken. And they had to send the women and the children back into town for their own sake. They had no gas, no electricity, and of course their tents were completely ruined. So anyway, it was all I seen, of course, was a sentence on the internet, and it came through actually a lady, Susan Rankin. A lot of Australians would know Susan Rankin. Susan Rankin is a leader, in Aboriginal culture, you know, leading people back to culture. And she, of course, was making a massive statement at the time of handing back in her documents to the Crown and demanding her rights in her position as an original Australian. But anyway, so Susan Rankin at the time had inspired me, and I was talking to her on the net. So these were people attached to her, attracted this one sentence, help us, it said. So anyway, I pressed on the button and I found out all about it, and there's these two old ladies out there in the middle of nowhere. So of course, being the Australian I am, you know, I packed up my work truck with all sorts of equipment. I packed it with generators, gas barbecue, gas bottles, extension leads, lights, even pairs of glasses and false teeth, would you believe? Anything I get my hands on, I pack that truck chock-a-block, and headed out to the outback to try and find these ladies and help them the best I could. Complete strangers. I've never met them in my life, nor they me, and but they were gracious to accept my help. Anyway, 3 days later, out in the outback, I eventually came across them on my last legs for petrol and resources, and just about to turn home. And anyway, and I found them. So the thing was, now me and the ladies, we sat down, and oh, by the way, I fixed the camp up best I could and gave them all the gear. But before I left, these two gracious ladies wouldn't let me leave until I explained my story. And at first I said, no, not wanting to, I like to share, I don't like to tell. And so anyway, over a cup of tea, the ladies and I sat down, and when I did explain the story of where I'm going and what's happened with the Gosford Glyphs and so on, the pair of them sat there, their mouths agog. They couldn't believe what was coming out of my mouth. I was expecting they were going to call security and I was going to be kicked out of there any minute, And but it turns out that the Spirit had done that thing that the Spirit does. The Spirit had led me there. And what happened was, it turned out that these very ladies, a family member of theirs, was the big man for the Glyph. All this long, long way away, almost 1,000 kilometres inland by now, and well, maybe not that far, but well on the way. But one of their family members was the big man for the Glyphs. He was from the Gosford area, and he was the Aboriginal man that had protected the site in court 5 years ago. And he had stopped a challenge in court by presenting to the court a type of plant that only grows in that one place. The court accepted that and gave the Glyphs another 5 years of protection from being built on. But what happened was this. Here we are. I'm telling them my story, and they've suddenly said, my goodness me, you should talk to our family member. He's the big man for the Glyphs. They put that man on the phone, and he said to me, is that you, Cup? He said, where have you been? You're late. And this man had been sitting there for 3 days expecting me to turn up, knowing that I would have the answer to his problem of saving the Gosford Glyphs. And
he knew your name.
He knew everything. Yeah, I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my ears. He knew I was coming. And he'd been waiting for, and he was almost cranky on me, for the fact that I got lost out in the outback and hadn't turned up. And so anyway, what happened then, of course, was he explained to me. Once I explained the message I had for him, he said to me this. He said, it's like this, Cut. And he was keen on calling me Cut. And he says, like this, Cut. He said, I am from that area. I am from the mother's line. I came out here to the outback of New South Wales to marry into the father's line. As Aboriginals and following bloodlines, they can't just marry the girl next door. So he'd especially gone to that area to be married and to have children, and he did. So he said to me, he said, Colin, he said, this is what we do. He said, you can go home now. He said, but what I do is, he said, I go there now and I take with me from this place the people from Dee Dee's father's line. And I go there and I meet with the people from the mother's line. And together we will talk in that place in that man's language and do ceremony. And from that, the old man will know that we know that he is there. And a healing will come to the land. And my job is done.
This hadn't happened yet. It hadn't happened before.
No, it was really weird. It was just synchronicity was the word you used, wasn't it? And this sort of synchronicity, had gone on right through the entire journey to do with the Gosford Glyphs. It seems that spirit there was doing the driving, and he took me to places and threw people in front of me, information in front of me that educated me in the first place, and it seems that here he was doing it again, and it seemed no end to the speed, of spirits, and how quick things came around, for that first custodian on the volcano that night to say to me, you have to do this. And here I am 3 weeks later, standing in front of the very descendants of Dee Dee from 4,580 years ago. It was just remarkable, and that's only a small part of it, of course. The whole journey was like that. And so at the risk of...
These talks at Mount, this ceremony, has that started to happen? Do you know?
Oh, yeah, he went immediately. Within days. Yeah, immediately. Yeah, this is how important it was to him. He'd been sitting there for 3 days waiting for the answer. And once again, this man is the big man for the glyphs. This man here, and again, I can't mention names, but anybody in that area would know who I'm talking about. He's the man that defended in court. So to him, this was a big event, that the 5 years was up. That developer was about to march back in there, and he was well within his own rights to bulldoze the whole thing down, and they were going. And so this man, the big man for the glyphs, he was sitting there in his circle in his backyard for 3 days, waiting for the car message to arrive that would give him the answer to go back and save the glyphs. And of course it did, And I don't know what part of the, other than the ceremony that he did, but I imagine that same man had already been to court many times. I guess he had contacts, But within days, of course, the courts made their decision, and it was taken away, and has now been taken off the developer. So, once again about spirit, because I don't mind talking freely on this, at the risk of even losing credibility, but I owe it to that spirit there. It would seem the whole story or journey began with that, in the way that an uncanny thing happened some time ago, perhaps a year ago or more before my journey. And what it was one night, I woke up in the morning and I had a dream fresh in my mind. And what it was is my Kath and I, we have a routine where in the morning, Kath wakes me up and she wakes up before me, which is so helpful, puts out her arm and I gently take her arm and together we stand there and we have a good morning kiss. And I always try to come up with a funny, and this morning's funny. What would have been done? I know it made you laugh, but we always have one, So on this particular morning, about a year before my journey started, as I went to kiss Kath and give her that little funny, I was disturbed by a dream that she'd wake me up from, and it was a dream that I'd run into a cave. And I had, would you believe, an iPod in my hand, which of course I ended up using for the whole thing, Kath thought. In this dream, I'd run into a cave, and here I am about to take a picture on a wall. Alongside me is a wizard. Would you believe this? It's wacky, isn't it? It's a strange world we live in. And the wizard, of course, is demanding I take this picture. And he's basically saying, now, take it. And I'm looking at the wizard, I'm looking at the picture on the wall, looking at the iPod in total confusion, thinking, well, what's going on? And in that, my Kath woke me up. And so our usual funny and cuddle was interrupted by my having this vision in my mind, that was so real, And I suggested to Kath, I said, goodness me, Kath, you wake me up just as I was about to take a picture on the wall. And anyway, but it stuck in my mind. It's one of those things that was so real. But here we are then a year later, I eventually get to the Gosford group. Now I've learned, Egyptian proto, or at least some, and here I am. I've gone into that place. We can call it a cave if we like, but, it's a partial cover. And as I lifted up the iPod to take the first picture, of course, my mouth dropped to my knees and I recognised what was there on the wall. It was the same name, of course, even though I couldn't understand it yet. It was the same thing that the old man in the dream had first pointed out. And it would seem, and this is what culture tells me when I explain it to them, that old man came to me way back then to give me a shake-up, to take me that place, to show me what it was he wanted me to see. And
you did.
Pardon?
And show you he did. Colin, I'm so sorry, but we're out of time.
I thought we might be. I was watching the clock, yeah. So I'm glad anyway I got to finish with just telling something about the old man and how that come about, at the great risk of losing credibility, but it doesn't matter.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah, I need to honour him for that. And so thank you very much for having me back, and thank you, Australia. Thank you, world, for giving me an audience to give this great place, the voice it needs. And please look out for me in the future. I'm on my own in this, and it's not an easy ride. So thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. It's been a pleasure again.
Okay.
And I'm sure we will do it again, because I know there's a lot more to tell.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, of course. Within 2 weeks from now, there's some major new movements again on this, so there'll be a lot more new news. And of course, I'll get better at this interview business. This is all new to me, I'm a great adventurer, but this is new. So please join me again, and I'll welcome you in that,
Will do. Let's talk soon. Thanks very much, Colin.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye for now.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live-streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN high-definition downloads. You can now purchase a high-definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high-definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.